Hello, everyone. Well, welcome, everybody. My name's Jonathan Sherman. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist in private practice. My background is I've been doing this for 30 years in a lot of different settings, from inpatient and outpatient substance abuse treatment for youth and adults, voluntary, court ordered, everything in between, domestic violence treatment programs, community mental health is a big part of my background, working with youth in abuse and trauma recovery. And in private practice, my business is Relate Great, relategreat.net. And that's where I really focus on three main areas of helping people develop marriage mastery, parent training, and self mastery, working with their mental health, addiction recovery, or just other life goals. And so I work with pretty much the full spectrum of whatever happens in family life, from individuals to couples to families, first getting together as in the dating scene to marriage prep to blended family dynamics to parenting to divorce transitions and everything in between. So I certainly don't know it all, but I know a lot more when I was a graduate student. So I'm sure a lot of us are in that boat. I'm also curious if you'll throw in the chat just what it is you do. What's your profession? Are you here as a fellow therapist or an educator or a community leader? Or if you're here as a layperson or somebody who just loves therapy and is just interested in that. So we've got another LMFT, mental health counselor, organizational development. What some people may not know is that a lot of therapy models are just for therapy. What's great about solution focused therapy, which started as a therapy model, people found that it works really good in a lot of other settings. So there's a lot of people who do organizational development, whether it's helping schools or corporations, companies, whatever the organization is, because it's all just relationships. It's all just people, right? I work on the micro organization of families and couples, and people who work with organizations and companies are working on the macro organizational level. So got other organizational development, leadership, counselors, SF enthusiasts, retired inventor. So thank you all for being here. I think we're all joined. We've got 25 people here. And so I'm just going to jump right in. We're going to cover a lot of ground in a short period of time. And so, like I said, feel free to interrupt me, raise your hand if you have a thought or a question. The conference organizer invited me and said, I like a lot of the fun things you do in your practice. I'm always posting things about therapy and my clients. And she just wanted to see if I would just share some insights from my practice. Of course, my practice is a way of doing things. It's certainly not the way, that's for sure. It's just one way that has really worked for me and for my clients. And of course, we all have to find the way that works for us. But one of the things that has influenced my therapy a great deal is solution focused work. And so in this presentation, I'm going to just give a little behind the scenes of some of the ways I mostly start a first session. And I'll share how I combine solution focused principles with practical tools, some structure, humor, and a very human approach to help couples feel safe, hopeful, and successful, often from the very first session. We'll talk about building buy in, how to engage reluctant partners, being appropriately directive while staying collaborative, and helping couples succeed between sessions, not just during them. And so if you're just interested in what solution focus looks like in a way that's lived in practice with real couples, I look forward to sharing this with you. And other therapists here who use solution focus, I know I'll be preaching to the choir, but I've always been interested, as I've learned from other therapists, how very differently we apply some of the same models. And that's what's so fascinating. As I thought, oh, I'm very solution focused in this way, and I'll see how someone else does. I'm like, man, that's genius. I never thought of it that way. And also, many of us aren't just strictly purists. We have this as a foundational underpinning, but also incorporate other models into how we do things and stuff. So, and I do a lot of that as well. So, why I practice the way I do is because simply couples are not broken, but boy, do they sure feel that way. They really feel that. Oh, sorry, I'm in my way of my own self here. Let me see if I can move myself there. There we go. Couples are not broken, but boy, they sure feel that way. And the relationship itself may actually be broken, but they are not. But people don't know how to separate that. Most people come in asking what I call the four wrong questions. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with her? What's wrong with him? What's wrong with us? And while there may be things wrong in all those categories, that's nine times out of 10, not the fundamental issue. It's usually how are we interacting in a way that's not working? That's usually the broken bits. And while of course we all have our issues that create complexities and difficulties, when we can learn how to shift interactional patterns, it's amazing how many other things start to shift. And we start to find out that, oh, maybe the core of the relationship wasn't wrong. We just didn't know how to do differently. And so, but boy, when it comes to that brokenness that happens, I just had a brand new couple come in the other day. And one thing I always ask is about their previous counseling. because I want to find out. I want to do a little market research. What worked, what didn't work? What did they like? What did they not like about their previous counseling? I mean, 9 times out of 10, right? If they had a really great counselor that they're working with, they're going to stick with that counselor. They're not going to be looking for someone else unless that person retired or moved away. But when I was asking this husband, he shared that their counselor had told him, he said, if you had healed yourself before you met her, you wouldn't have chosen her. And I heard that and I'm like, what the hell? Are you kidding me? That's the message you're going to give? That you need, that for you to have a successful relationship, you've got to heal yourself fully and completely before you enter a relationship. Well, if that's the case, none of us are getting married or being in a relationship ever, because good luck on that one. That's just not happening. Instead, people need to know that there's hope. They need to know that we don't have to have everything figured out to have a perfect relationship. They need to know that there's a strategy to get from point A to B. Because a lot of people, of course, arrive, a lot of people, someone's coming in, a lot of people come discouraged by past therapy experiences or feeling over pathologized, like I'm talking about, feeling constantly analyzed instead of being helped, or just honestly sometimes overly listened to without being helped. And so as a result, they come in feeling afraid, skeptical, is counseling even going to work, embarrassed, they can feel broken and just like a mess. And what they need is they need to leave that first session feeling safe, heard, confident that there's a plan. They need to feel good that they came when so few people do. That's really an important point of a first session message. So many people come feeling broken and messed up and even embarrassed that they're here. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I was telling one couple a while ago, they felt really embarrassed about coming. Like, we're such a mess. I go, that you're a mess isn't the issue. That you guys have all these problems, that to me is not the issue. Everyone has some version of this. Look at the daunting divorce statistics. Look at the low marital satisfaction rates that are so discouraging. That people have problems isn't the issue. The issue is that people aren't doing anything with it, or they don't know what to do with it. That's the problem. And you guys were willing to come in when so many couples aren't. That means you're part of the solution. You're stepping into a solution. You're the ones who are doing what most people don't do, which means that opens the door to getting what most people don't get. And most people want a great relationship. And we don't have in our society a method of systematically teaching people how to be successful in relationships. We have methods for systematically teaching people how to be successful in walking and talking and basic math and basic language skills and how to drive a car, because we all have to deal with that. So we teach everybody a systematic way of doing that. But when it comes to emotions and relationships, if you're a good enough person, it'll just work out. If you love each other enough, it'll just magically happen. If you care enough, you just know. And we don't apply that in any other part of life. With everything else, we know, oh, we probably need skills and knowledge and training. And especially if we're all going to interface together, let's learn things that really work. And so they've been failing, not because they're failures. They've been failing because 9 times out of 10, they never knew another way. And so the fact that they're here means that they're now stepping into the solution. And when I explained that to them, they felt really good about going to counseling. Within just a few minutes of having that conversation, they felt like, wow, from feeling shameful, they felt proud that they were there. And a lot of times people just don't know how to look at it. Okay. So that's really important. So, okay. I'm just checking my notes, make sure I didn't miss anything. All right. Now, first of all, I have to, as I was looking for what pictures I wanted to use and how the first session is crucial for clients, individuals, couples, families. The first session is crucial. How we approach, how we set that up makes or breaks oftentimes whether they come back again. And that's not, of course, just good for business. Obviously, if my clients don't come back, I don't have a business and I don't feed my family. So there's a bit of self-interest there. But also I got into this field like all of you did because you probably just give a big, huge damn and really want to make a difference and help people. And so we need to make sure that the first session is successful for them so they feel really good about coming back. So they really feel like they can get through the work that's going to be required to make those changes. And so we need to be able to answer their fears. And as I was finding pictures for my slide presentation, I found this one in the stock photography for couples in therapy. What's going on with this? Why is the therapist turned around looking away and not engaging? This is like classic Freudian sitting on the couch and I won't interact with you. I'll just take notes, and very weird, just funny sometimes how therapy is portrayed. But it does lead up to something that happens in therapy a lot, is their fears aren't answered right away. People come in with a lot of fears, and we need to figure out how to answer their fears right out the gate. They come in afraid and overwhelmed with a bunch of different fears. One of them being, first of all, will it work? right? Is this going to work? And if they've had previous counseling, which like I said, I always ask about previous counseling, I want to learn about what they liked or didn't like so that hopefully we can find out if what I'm going to be offering is going to be different than what they got, right? Because then we can maybe answer what didn't work in their previous counseling and how this can be different, right? Like one thing that I've heard from a lot of people, they'll say, yeah, he or she was nice, but I didn't feel like we got a lot of direction. I felt like we got a lot of validation, but we didn't really make any progress. We didn't really have a plan. It was just kind of like, how do you feel? And practice listening to each other, but didn't really get anywhere. Didn't feel like there was a real strategy. Along those lines, one woman said, yeah, they were nice, but I felt like we just had an audience member to our problems. And I thought, man, that's well said. We need to listen to our clients when they tell us how therapy works and doesn't work for them. I've always been amazed that sometimes we look for client-centered approaches, but then we mostly kind of work from the model or work from what the treatment plan says we should do or what our productivity numbers require instead of going, wait a minute. Because when I was first a therapist, I was told to be non-directive. And a lot of models are non-directive. And I still believe, because we believe in what's called postmodernistic co-constructionism, where we aren't the expert and our clients aren't the problem patients, but we're co-constructing solutions together. And so the client needs to be the expert. And that's very true in a lot of ways. But the fact is, as one woman told me, she said, I was asking about her previous counseling, and she said to her therapist, she said she was dealing with a crippling depression. And she said, what do I do? And their therapist reflected back, what do you think you should do? And quite frankly, that ticked off my client. She's like, I wouldn't be asking if I knew what to do. I need skills and strategies and tools. It's okay to direct our clients. It's not our job to take over for our clients, but we can trust that our clients can pick and choose, that they can decide what works for them or not. And so that goes to part of the thing is that fear, answer their fear is, will it work? Well, let's show them when they ask is if we can, if when we find out about what they like or didn't like about their previous counseling, can we give them some things that are different? Can we show, oh, I can see why that didn't work. Here's how we're going to do things differently. Or thanks for letting me know so I can adjust my approach to really fit what you're looking for. To feel heard like that, not just about their issues, but to feel heard about what their concerns about therapy itself. Okay. Will I like the therapist? It's another fear. Will it be a good fit? What if I don't like the therapist? Then what do I do? Now, this is a big problem because when you ask people about their previous counseling, what you guys may have noticed as well is if they did do previous counseling, a few patterns will show up. I'll ask them, well, how long did you go? On average, 3 or 4 times. Well, obviously, 3 or 4 times isn't going to do a whole lot. That's like me going to the gym 3 or 4 times with a personal trainer and then going, well, I didn't lose 50 pounds. Well, because that's not how it works. But they'll stop going because they'll assume, well, maybe we should have worked longer at it. Maybe it didn't work because we didn't stay longer. And that's partly true. But also, what if it wasn't a good fit with the therapist? And what if the therapist never educated them on how therapy works? Because while the model's important and while my experience matters a great deal and their willingness to come in is crucial, most of us know that the single most predictive factor of a good outcome in counseling is it the right fit with the therapist, right? And if our clients don't know that, and why would they know that? They're not reading the research on what creates efficacy in counseling. How would they possibly know that? So we have to educate them. So what I let them know is that, well, I'm pretty much a referral only business. I'm word of mouth marketing at this point. I've been doing in private practice for 15 years. And so I don't really go out and drum up business or market very much anymore. It's mostly just friends and family referring their friends and family, which is great because then I got a really good, strong referral base of people who liked me and found it helpful. So they're referring like-minded people. And so it tends to be, I tend to get great clients and they get a good fit with me. But I always tell them, that's great. I really appreciate that your friend or family member trusts me and they referred you to me. That means a lot to me. And if I earn your trust, that's great. I hope that I do. And if I earn your trust, of course, we'll just keep working together. But if I'm not the right guy, we're going to fire my butt ASAP. That's my number one rule. And then I'll help you get connected. Because what happens is 9 times out of 10, when somebody stopped going to counseling, they went 3 or 4 times and they stopped, and then they didn't go again for another year or 2 or 3. And the problems that they had when they stopped counseling that got them into counseling in the first place, the problems didn't stop. The problems continued. So when I tell them we're going to fire my butt if I'm not the right fit, almost always I get an audible, verbal, or visible sign of relief. They go, "Oh, I'm so glad you said that." It answers a fear they have. What if we finally found another counselor and then it's not a good fit? It was hard to find a counselor in the first place for most people. They don't know where to start. What if it's not a good fit? They don't know what to do, and so they get discouraged and they stop going. So we need to help them know that if I'm not the right guy, don't worry. We'll fire my butt, but I know lots of really good people that might be a better fit for you. And I know the therapist to avoid, because not every therapist is good. There's some ones I wouldn't refer my worst enemy to. And there's others that are absolute geniuses that really make such a change for people. So my rule that I give my couples is that the good news is counseling works really great when it's done right and it's the right fit. So if counseling is not working, let's just quit the counselor, and but don't quit counseling. So that's my rule. And that answers a lot of fears for them, right? Of course, then there can be the fear of triangulation, where what if, and previous counseling experiences people have had where felt like the counselor took my wife or my husband's side against me. And that can happen. Oftentimes that happens, quite frankly, when the counselor doesn't have couples training. They may work with couples, but they weren't specifically trained in couples counseling dynamics. And so triangulation can happen. Part of that is I let them know that I'm actually not a neutral counselor. Contrary to most belief, people think, well, the counselor is going to be perfectly neutral. It's not going to happen. I let them know that I do have a bias. My bias is the relationship, that I'm going to not be your counselor or your counselor. I'm going to be the counselor for the relationship. And so there's like a third entity here. And so I'm going to advocate for what the relationship needs for the relationship to be healthy. And sometimes you might be more at fault. You might be more wrong. You might need to work on things more. And it's not always going to be a perfect 50-50 balance, but I'm always going to be fighting for what the relationship needs. And since you guys are coming, if that's their stated goal, that they want to improve their relationship or save their marriage or see if it's possible to save or whatever, then I'm going to let them know I'm going to be biased towards their goals that they gave me. And that helps. Usually most people feel comfortable too. That answers the fear of what if someone is going to take a side. Well, I'm going to take a side, but I'm not going to take your side or your side. I'm going to take the side of what the relationship itself needs. And that tends to give people more comfort right out the gate. Another question I ask right out the gate, right, as far as from a solution focused perspective, what's a preferred outcome, right? How will the miracle question right out the gate of, if somehow we're able to make all this work, how will we know that it's working? What will be different or better? How will we know that we're done? I let them know is that my job with every couple is to work myself out of a job with every couple. And so hopefully I get fired for the right reasons because we've achieved our goals and we don't need to come anymore. What will that look like? And we really lay down what our outcome is going to be, because oftentimes, unfortunately, if we're not solution focused trained, or a lot of counselors will ask what seems like a reasonable question, right? Like, what are your concerns? What brings you in here? What seems to be the problem? And that sounds like a reasonable question, except that human nature skews negative. We skew towards identifying problem talk. And while the problems matter, we can get lost and stuck in problem talk right out the gate. We need to start with, what is the preferred outcome? We need to start orienting them towards a solution focus. To start looking at, we'll still deal with the problem, but we're going to deal with the problem so that we can get this outcome. We need to start getting a vision of what that looks like, so that they have something to hang on to as they're dealing with the problem. It's not just, well, I hope that we can just patch it together so, we can stay married so the kids don't have to go through that. Like, that's not a bad starting point, but I tell my clients, I'm not interested in patching together your crappy marriage. That's not necessarily the best outcome for you. And from a business standpoint, that's not really great marketing for me. When somebody goes, who helped you with your marriage? Oh, Jonathan Sherman did. And like, that's the result you got. Well, I don't want to go see that guy. So it's not really, I want people to have a compelling vision, one that they can feel really confident about, that they feel really good about. Okay. So those are some fears. There's probably many more fears. But those are some areas that can start by answering the fears. That helps do the next thing, which is putting people at ease, which I already mentioned, the fire my butt rule. And the other part of that too, when that helps us get into the collaborative space, is I let them know what my expertise is. I'll let them know, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years. I know this side of the street really well, but I'm new kid on your block, right? I don't know anything here. This is where I start to introduce the idea of co-constructionism and collaborative results. We just don't use that psychobabble terminology with most people. But I let them know is that I need you to teach me. As I'm learning you, we're going to try all kinds of things. We're going to talk about different ideas, strategies, methods, approaches. As we talk about things, let me know what resonates with you. Let me know what fits, what works with you, what you like. That'll teach me, oh, with this person or this couple, this works for them. Oh, okay. That teaches me, that educates me what works so I can do more of what's working, right? Or if I'm getting something wrong, or you think I should be talking about this instead of this over here, I'm not tracking something, feel free to, or you disagree with something, or it doesn't make sense, or it seems counterintuitive, ask me, question me, challenge me, be skeptical. Don't just believe me because I say so. I said, if I earn your trust, great, but don't trust me too much, right? I'm here to work for you and with you. It's not my job to tell you what to do. And so by doing that, that really helps, again, put them at ease, let them know that they're not here to just get fixed by some guru. They're here to have someone who's working as a consultant with them. It's their life. It's like when you hire, when you own the business and you hire a consultant, the consultant works for you to help make your business stronger. Well, here I work for my clients to help them create the relationship that they want to have. Okay, so that's part of letting them know that they get to be a big part of how this works. Okay, it's important to orient couples to solution focused thinking. I like to remove any mystery behind counseling. I like to just pop open the hood and show people how the engine works and let them know, hey, this is why we do what we do here. I teach them that I'm going to be asking you every single session, beginning of every session, I'm going to ask, what have you noticed this week that's been a little bit different or a little bit better? And that seems like a simple, obvious question, but invariably the next week when I ask them what was a little bit different or better, people will say, no, it's the same. There's been no big change. Nothing major has happened. And that kind of shows how our thinking is naturally skewed towards looking for big change when we have big problems, which makes sense. If couples are coming oftentimes at the point of crisis or big distress, and so when there's big problems, people are naturally looking for big solutions. And so they're looking for those things themselves. So they didn't really hear the question. And so I'll reorient to them and said, yeah, I didn't expect there to be anything big or major. That's totally okay and normal at this stage. I'll just like what I'm actually asking for is what have you noticed that in the midst of all the big problems and struggles, what's been maybe just a little bit different or maybe just a little bit better with how you've been thinking or feeling or what you've been noticing with yourself or what you've been trying or what your partner's been doing, even if it was just tried it for a few minutes and then the whole thing fell back to hell and crap like everything has in the past, even what's just maybe just been a little bit different. And then we start getting into that conversation. Well, I guess I did try to bite my tongue a little bit longer and see it more from her perspective, but then I just got really pissed off from what she said. And then they start going into that problem talk. And I'm like, well, hold on a minute. I want to hear what's important to you with that, but I'm really curious. What do you mean you tried to bite your tongue? What was that? What was going on with that? Does that sound like maybe something in the past you maybe wouldn't even try to bite your tongue? You would just run with it. Yeah, yeah, just been trying to do that more, but it's really hard. Yeah, it does sound really hard. But that's interesting that you were trying to maybe just shift it a little bit. I'm wondering what it would look like. And you said you're only able to do it for a minute or two before you lost your cool. But I'm interested, what would it look like? What would it look like to get to maybe 2 to 4 minutes of that? What would you be doing a little bit different or better if you were able to get there? And we start talking about that, and then we go, well, that's interesting. Well, we've just now doubled your success and your progress. And like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. Well, it's okay. We're going to start thinking about it that way. Because then between the three of us, I bet if we can double from 1 to 2 minutes to 2 to 4, I bet we can probably at some point get that up to 15 to 30 minutes. And what happens if you actually are controlling your temper for 15 or 30 minutes in a difficult conversation? What difference will that make in your communication and conflict? Oh, that would be huge. That would change everything. Oh, so there would be a big change to a big problem. Well, we know in solution focused work that the solution and the magic isn't in the big changes, it's in the little stuff. We look for exceptions to the problem. We're excited about small change, and we start training our clients to get excited about small change. And a lot of times people just aren't used to thinking that way because when we have big problems, we're looking for big solutions because we have big pain. And it's understandable that we want the pain to go away quickly and rapidly. And sometimes it takes a while. Even though solution focused is faster than other therapies, it can still take a while when we're dealing with long entrenched problems in a relationship, or big hurts or pains or infidelities or substance abuse problems or any number of issues that are going on. You know, things can still take a while. But if we can feel like, hey, there's this little bit actually does count. And it's okay if it takes a little while, if we know what to track and know what to look for, then we can have more hope and more encouragement. Okay. And again, that question keeps us out of the question of how was your week? How are you doing? What do you want to talk about? We do solution focused is a directive counseling because we're asking questions to direct towards a solution orientated mindset. Okay. And that's not neutral. We're actually guiding the conversation that way. And then that helps people start to think in a way they're not used to thinking. And that really helps people get out of that. Okay. And what's really cool is that we start to find this magic piece. I was just talking to a new couple tonight, and she's really not sure if she's ready to make things work. And he's really hoping that it will, but she's not really sure because she said, even if we can, I'm worried about it. Just seems like it's so much. It's taken so many years to develop these problems, and the habits have been really entrenched, and there's a lot of problems, and it's taken so much time, and it's caused so much pain. Even if we do work on it, we're going to have to deal with each of these problems over this amount of time to undo all of that. And I'm like, man, you're right. That sounds depressing as hell. That's daunting. It's discouraging. I mean, who has that kind of, at this point, especially, who has that kind of energy left to even work on it, even if they could? Even if it would work, who's got that kind of energy or that kind of time or even the financial resources to afford that much therapy for years and years? Well, the cool thing is the secret to change when it's done well, that solution focused is really good at leveraging, is the secret is that we don't need to fix everything to fix everything. When we start making some fundamental shifts in the interactional pattern, when we start to go back to that simple example of biting my tongue for 1 to 2 minutes, then to 2 to 4, then to 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 30 minutes, that one fix from one tiny solution doesn't just fix that one thing, right? It starts to ripple out and affect a lot of things, because now that I'm biting my tongue, I'm actually creating more space for my partner to talk more. And the more that they can talk and I'm regulating my emotion so that I'm biting my tongue, the chances of my partner being able to say more that's important to him or her increases. The chance of me hearing more of what's important to them increases. And the chance of me maybe able to get past my anger and irritation and open up to compassion and empathy starts to change. And then I can hear more and respond maybe a little bit differently and a little bit better. And then from that one thing, this starts to fix so many other things. And then we add in a few more crucial shifts. Then we start getting this multiple ripple effects going. And it's really cool to see that sometimes it's a matter of weeks or months, maybe a year, where we're turning around things that have been entrenched for decades, you know? So anyway, so there's that part. That's one thing that I absolutely love about doing couples work from a solution focused perspective. Okay, now where are we in my slides here? Okay, great. Another thing I deal with a lot, of course, those of you who work with couples have probably experienced this similar dynamic that I've had, is that in couples counseling, the vast majority of the time, 9 times out of 10, I say 9 times out of the 10 all the lot. Obviously, I'm not pulling from research. I'm just pulling from the top of my head because not everything is a 90% ratio. But one of the most common things you'll see in couples counseling is that there's usually a dragger and a draggee. And most often, the dragger is the woman who sets up the appointment and the guy's dragged into counseling. And so many times as I've talked with women who are setting up the appointment, and I'll ask, well, how's your husband feel about coming into counseling? And she goes, well, he's willing to come, but he doesn't want to come. And I'll go, that's okay. And I said, well, doesn't he need to want it to work for it to work? I said, well, it's nice when that happens, but we don't always have that option. And the good news is we don't need someone to want it to work. I just need someone to show up. Oh, she goes, okay, well, that's good. He's willing to show up, but he won't talk. I go, well, he'll talk. He goes, no, you don't understand. You don't know him. He won't talk. He doesn't share his feelings. He doesn't talk about what's going on. And it takes forever to drag anything out of him. I go, well, that's fair. You know him. I don't know him. I don't want to sound presumptuous. But the fact is, I'm really good at getting guys to talk who don't want to talk, who maybe they've had a bad experience in counseling. Maybe a lot of therapy, I think unintentionally, but in a very real way, tends to be more female friendly. And I don't want this to sound like I'm making stereotypes that all women are this way and all men are this way. I'm just talking about norms that happen frequently. a lot of therapy tends to work natively to how a lot of women process emotions and communication, where we're processing, talking about emotions, talking about how we feel, talking about how they are in context to relationships and whatnot. So that can feel very natural for a lot of women, and a lot of men, we just don't, we haven't been socialized to talk and open up that way, generally speaking, and stuff. And so oftentimes men are seen as resistant, won't open up and won't talk. And not only do their spouses see them that way, I've trained a lot of therapists who aren't necessarily couples counselors, but maybe they're still working with a couple. And so they want some ideas. How do I deal with them better? Or they're not trained in solution focused mindsets. And I'll let them know that he's not being resistant. We're not learning how he opens up yet. And so one of the great solution focused tenets that I absolutely love is we believe in solution focused therapy that there's no such thing as a resistant client, only a resistant therapist. And the resistant therapist won't learn what the client's resistance is teaching them. And so oftentimes what will happen is I'll have a guy come in and he is shut down. He doesn't really want to talk and he feels really uncomfortable. And this isn't a natural space for him, especially for another guy to talk to another guy about how he's failing and he's failing his marriage and he can't be successful there. Who wants to talk about that with another man? That's not typical male culture. Now, fortunately, a lot of things are shifting with the younger generation. It's becoming more open and guys are learning another way to communicate, but there's still a lot of us men who are still raised in that kind of typical male culture and stuff. So that can be really hard. And so a common thing that will happen is I'll say to the guy, well, what is it that you wish to be different or better in your relationship moving forward? And he'll say something like, I don't know, I just wish we didn't fight as much. I wish we'd just be better friends. And so often she'll pipe in with, well, that's not true. If you wish we were better friends, then why do you do this? If you didn't want to fight, then why do you do this and this and this? And you always do this and you don't do that. And all of a sudden, you'll see what I just started to get him to open up with, he'll shut down. And I'll point out at that moment, I'll say, you know, one thing that women have said for years to men is, I don't want you to fix me. I just want you to listen. And I said, this is an area that a lot of times women will fall into that fix it role. And I said, I need you to just let me pull him out more. Most of the time, since women are oftentimes initiating couples counseling more than men, I'm not trying to sell the therapy experience to the woman. She's already bought into it. I'm trying to sell a safe experience for the guy. And so what I let him know is that, wait a minute, no, just hang in there. Don't shut down. Let's just tell me a little bit more. I'm going to listen longer. I want to hear more about this. And they find out that they will talk. And when she learns to go, oh, and she's taking that guidance from me to listen longer, she's amazed at how much guys do open up in counseling when they're talking to a guy who is going to respect how he as a man talks about things. And so a lot of guys, women want this too. Sorry, where's the, okay, oops. Women want tools, direction, and progress too, but men especially are really looking for that. They're not interested in analyzing, doing lots of deep insight, lots of emotional processing, going back and dealing with all the past issues and traumas. And while those come up and we oftentimes need to deal with those things, they want to know, what do I do? How do I fix this? How do we know that there's progress? What's the direction? Are there skills and tools that we can do? Right? I just want to have a plan. And when guys get that, and I talk in a lot of classic guy terminology, I talk about mechanics. One, I'm a driveway mechanic. I've wrenched on vintage VWs for years. And so my office is here just in my backyard. I've got a little cute little cottage, and my couples walk past the driveway. They pass by our 1969 VW hippie bus, and it creates a point of conversation. And I'll talk about sports. I'll talk about mechanics. I'll talk about business strategies and stuff. These are things that not all men, but a lot of men have had practice in knowing how to be successful in those areas. And I start helping them know that, hey, if you could learn how to be successful here, let me teach you the mechanics. Let me teach you the rules of relationships. Let me show you the metrics of how to be successful. And then we start to be able to give them some small structures that have a big impact that they just oftentimes didn't know. I help them start to design environments where good things can start to happen. Part of that starts here in our therapy office. In that first session, we're creating an environment where they can start to feel hope and confidence, sometimes for the first time. They can start to hear, oh, there's a plan and a strategy and a way through. We're not going to just come in and start talking about the problem. We're not going to just come in and just argue, and then leave feeling worse than we came in. And a lot of people told me that was their experience in previous counseling. I'm like, and you still went? I would have stopped going right after the first time. So Now, not every couple leaves my office feeling great after every session, but more often than not, they feel encouraged and hopeful, and they're willing to go out and try things. And they may revert back into conflicts and the old patterns and habits during the week, but they leave feeling, okay, there's a new direction. So it makes them more likely to want to come back and then get more of that help. And so part of that structure we start to set, we design an environment here where good things can happen, but then we start creating some spaces. But what I start to do with my couples right out the gate is I start to develop some relationship rhythms, some relationship routines, some very simple, repeatable practices that we can start gaining traction in without having to solve all the problems first. A lot of times people come in thinking, well, we need to solve all our issues. We need to work through all our individual stuff. Many of you have probably heard the common therapy myth that you need to work on your individual self before you. A lot of times people have this idea that we need to work on our individual stuff before we can work on our relationship stuff. And there's a certain logic to that, but it's not purely logical because I don't know any football team anywhere in the world where the athlete trains on getting themselves into perfect athletic shape before they ever train with their team. Most teams train concurrently. They do individual training and team training at the same time because one affects the other. And the more we work on the relationship stuff, that tells me where I need to work on my individual stuff. Where I work on my individual stuff, that helps me work on my relationship stuff. And so working on it together is really important. And so I want them to have some practices that they can start working on immediately the next week, some homework that they can work on, some strategies, whether it's helping them develop some initial fair fighting rules with each other, or doing what I call the 3 meetings, where I give them the structure of, we're going to start having a weekly date night, which sounds simple on the surface, but what that does is it starts to create an intentionality and a priority of the relationship. And I have 5 rules that goes with that, so they have some structure of what to do and what not to do in the relationship. The other meetings of having a daily hunting and gathering connection and a weekly staff meeting where we start to have places, structures, environments where we can start to do things differently and not wait for our feelings to get better. Let's start learning how to do better behaviors so we can start shaping our emotions differently, right? Classic cognitive behavioral therapy approach, right? The main premise of cognitive behavioral therapy is as we change our thinking and change our behaviors, that then starts to shape and change how our emotions go. Whereas most people have it differently. I need to change how I feel before I can behave better. And so I start to help them establish some structures, some small structures that start to have a big impact. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to share there. And then that way they can start to realize, oh, that we don't have to just, we can go to Jonathan or the couples counselor for help and assistance, but we're actually doing a lot of the work. We're creating a lot of the change between session. And then when it doesn't work, no problem. We can go back and get that tweaked and learn from what didn't work or build on what did work. Okay. But having something tangible that they can do every week between session. And of course, finding what that pace and rhythm is for everyone. Now, there's no cookie cutter approach because some couples are homework junkies. They want to read everything. They want to listen to the podcast. They want to have all the rules and structures. Others are, that's just another thing that's going to overwhelm them. And so less is more for some couples and more is more for some couples. So we have to find out what that pace is for each person, each couple. Helping couples succeed between sessions, as I was just starting to say, is that we want to really help them learn that success happens at home so that over time, I want them at first to feel totally okay that it's okay to be dependent on therapy at the beginning. Some couples have never learned how to fight ever. They're having their first healthy fight for the first time in front of a counselor. They're hearing things from each other they never heard in 20 years of marriage. Or they're hearing the therapist decode it and translate it and explain it in a way they never understood before. And I am often amazed, you guys may have had a similar experience. I'm often amazed that sometimes in a first 90-minute session, I've learned things about their partner that their partner never knew. I feel like sometimes I understand their partner better than their partner does. And that's not because I'm some freaking genius, although I'd like to think I am, but I think it's really because as therapists, we oftentimes know how to listen and how to listen differently. And of course, I'm not emotionally embroiled in their relationship pain and whatnot that I'm able to hear differently. But we do know how to hear differently. We do know what to look for. And that's the good news, is that that's not just a therapy skill, that's a relationship skill. And we can teach and train them how to do that first here in the office by observing it being modeled for them by someone else. Because you can take all my psychology and child development and therapy books off the wall, and I've got a few hundred over here. You can take all of those and condense them into one line. It's monkey see, monkey do. If we don't see it, we don't know how to do it. So that's one of the benefits of counseling. It's not that we're just processing through things. We're getting to see a model of, oh, this is how the therapist listened to my husband that helped him open up. This is how the therapist listened and validated my wife and helped her feel more relief. And then he taught us how to do it where we can do it ourselves with each other. And then they can take that home so that over time, they start with a lot of dependence on therapy, but then over time they learn to shift that. And the goal is, of course, eventually where we're starting to taper off sessions and maybe just doing maintenance sessions and then maybe just doing checkups once a year or so as needed, or if there's a new issue arises or a new challenge, right? And this creates a result of less dependence on therapy, more ownership, faster progress, and less burnout for everyone. And it's not, again, not just good for them, which is a good enough reason, but it's a good business practice. That creates good word of mouth marketing, which is the whole holy grail of marketing, right? It's the best kind of marketing you can get that you can't buy, and it's free. Okay. And stuff. And so oftentimes people will ask, well, how long is it going to take? Right? People ask that a lot. This is another fear going back to our first conversation in the session is it's a fear people have. How long is this going to take and how long is it going to cost? And of course, I give them the answer that one of my family science professors gave me early on. She said that the only accurate answer in most family systems is it depends. And that's a very accurate situation. I mean, a very accurate answer to many, many different unique situations, but it's not a satisfying answer. And so I will give them, we do know that from the research that people will come on average, whether they should stay longer or not, 6 to 10 sessions. And so whether they should work longer or not as solution focused therapists, we know we have a limited window we need to work with. Now, I stretch that out for my couples. I tell them that I'd like, if, as long as I'm with the right fit, as long as we decide I'm the right fit, I want you to at least commit to 12 sessions. So if we're meeting weekly or every other week, that's 3 to 4 months. Now, I'm not guaranteeing outcomes, but what we should be able to see is if we're starting here and we're wanting to get here over those 3 to 4 months, we should be able to see whether we're able to start to make some shifts. Because in the first, there's a little bit of reasoning behind these 12 sessions. Usually in the first session or two, people are feeling a renewed hope and an encouragement. They're hearing ideas they hadn't thought of before. They're being proactive by reaching out. They're feeling a good connection with the therapist. They're starting to see this might be possible. Maybe this could work for us. And of course, that's encouraging. But then by session 3 or 4, week 3 or 4, what are they hitting? They're hitting their habits, their walls, their patterns. They're running across nothing's gone away, and the whole change hasn't happened yet. So they get discouraged, and if they're not careful, they don't know that there's a structure and a strategy. They'll stop by session 3 or 4. They'll go, it's not working, you know? And so I want them to work past it. And I said, then we're going to do from sessions, throughout all that, through session 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we're going to really just be grinding. We're just going to be doing the work. We're going to figure out the next piece and the next piece and the next piece and build off those little things that are different or better and start to create a little bit more progress here as we're still untangling all this other stuff. And so we can just get just doing the work of the work and getting that mindset. It's so that our relationship should require work, that nothing great is the result of easiness, right? That there's no great sports team or a bit of architecture or orchestra or business that was built easily. And a lot of times people have this feeling, they'll say to me sometimes like, Jonathan, it shouldn't be this hard, or you have so many rules or structures for us. I'm like, yeah, so if you can show me one example of greatness somewhere that was made quick and easy, I'd like to see it. Maybe there is one, but I haven't seen it in 30 years of asking that question. So let's expect a great relationship to have great work. We can do great work that is the right kind of work versus a lot of effort with little result, but it's still going to be a lot of work. So we start to develop that mindset. And then if we are making the progress we need, then sessions 10, 11, 12, maybe we're starting to taper off to every other week or once a month or something like that. Now, for some couples, that's enough to get from point A to B where they need to go. Other couples, so they've gone from here to here. Other couples, maybe they've only made it to here. So there's still maybe a lot more work to do to get to here, but we can see that there's progress. They're not just still flat, right? I don't want to just keep people just going to therapy over and over and over and over, never making progress and just trusting the process and just trust the therapist. And no, if something isn't working, I want to identify that. They want to identify that. So even if it's going to take longer, but we can see, hey, we have made progress from point A. We're not to point B, but we're at point 8.5, we're getting there so that people can have that encouragement. Okay. Besides all the hard work and things like that, people are sometimes surprised. I've had a lot of people say to me, you've probably heard this too, like, well, what do you do? I'm a therapist and oh, a marriage therapist. And oh, wow, I couldn't do that. I'm like, why? And it's always the same answer. Oh, it just sounds so depressing listening to people bitch and moan all day or complain or fight. And I'm like, yeah, that does sound depressing. I'm so glad I don't do that. And they're like, what do you mean you don't do that? And I said, well, yeah, people are coming in and complaining. People are coming in and having problems, but that's not what we're doing in session. We're working through those problems. I am working with people who are brave enough to face hard things and willing and humble enough to share that with another person and try, in spite of past failures, they're willing to try again. How do you not respect and admire people like that? It's a pretty impressive thing. And then also, because life is messy and people are funny and we're all a little bit goofy in the head anyway, there's a lot of things to laugh at. We joke and laugh a lot, very irreverently, frequently in therapy. It's not all just doom and gloom and hard work. There's a lot of encouragement. There's progress that's made. There's celebrations that occur, right? Laughter really helps grease the track. It doesn't minimize pain. It helps regulate emotion and lowers defensiveness and builds safety, right? That we can have seriousness without heaviness, right? One of my favorite people in the solution focused world, as well as just in the therapy world, is Michelle Weiner Davis. And I went to a presentation of hers years ago when I was a graduate student. And I remember her saying she referred to herself as a hope monger. I've heard her say that she's insanely, irrationally a hopeful person. But I like that hope monger thing is that many of our clients come without hope or barely a shred of it left. And I'm like, no worries. I've got more than enough. I've got scads and loads and heaps of hope. So I'll hold the hope until you can get it. And we need to have not just a solution focus, but a certain humor, humanity, and presence to give that and allow that they can see through, again, modeling that there is a way out and there's a hopeful way out. Okay. And so bottom line is why this works is that simply success creates hope. When people can start to get even just that initial sense of success in the very first session, that, hey, there's hope, there's possibility, we can do this, there's some initial steps we can take. It's going to be a positive, strength-based, solution-focused while we deal with the hard problems. It's not going to be something we're just mired in. Okay. So I know we're at time. I think we got there just fine. I want to thank you all for coming. I appreciate your attentiveness. And if anybody has any comments, feel free to throw them in the chat. If anybody wants to connect with me, feel free to go to relategreat.net where you can learn about me, or you can add Jonathan at relategreat.net. You can find me there. You can add me on your socials, whatever it is. I'd love to connect with you, whether you're a professional or whether you're a client or anything. I just love to connect with people and network that way and get to know each other. Thank you for joining from around the world. Enjoy the rest of your sessions. Have a great day or night or morning, wherever you're at in the world. And I'll talk to you all hopefully another time in the future. All right. Best to y'all. Bye-bye. And if anybody has any last minute comments, you're welcome to pop in while everyone's going off to their next thing. I'll stay on here for a few minutes in case anybody does.
Thank you for the helpful training.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot.
Yeah, I work with couples myself, and some of the points that you highlighted, I really admired as far as like you're welcome to fire my butt, although I might not say it like that, but I loved
Uh,
how it just relieves the tension. And a lot of times, oh my gosh, the women are so contentious. And I'm just like, but it's really important for me to remember that there's love present or they wouldn't be there. So I really focus in on that part of it. So,
right on. Right
and
on. Such a great point. Yeah.
yes, absolutely. And one of the things I'll point out after I get their kind of love story, because I love the first session because I really focus in on how did you guys meet and who contacted who and
Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes the man is the one that remembers all the details, right? And
Right.
it's shocking to the woman, right? And then just because of that, they're laughing and smiling, and then I'll ask them what's better next time we met, and they're like, "Wow, we really realize, this and that, and what have you."
So good.
Yeah, so I really appreciate some of the things and the good reminders. And I forget, I think I did a screenshot of it. What's been better? Or no, actually, how did you phrase it? What's been better or what's been different? I
Yeah,
think
what's
is,
been a little bit different? What's been a
oh,
little bit better since the last time we met?
yes,
Uh-huh.
yes. So I like that phrasing of that. What's been a little bit better or a little bit different
Yeah.
versus what's been better, which is usually what my standard default question is. But
Uh-huh.
what's been a little bit better? What's been a little bit different?
Yeah, it takes a little, besides being solution focused in that sense, it takes a bit of pressure off. I'm not looking for big change.
Yeah.
I'm actually excited about small change. I even tell my clients when big change happens, I'm excited. I'm happy when it happens, but I honestly don't trust it a whole lot. You know,
Uh-huh. Right.
I don't need you guys going on a cruise and a honeymoon and renew your
Sure.
vows and all of that. Chances are that's probably going to be really nice, but it's not going to change anything fundamentally. But the small changes, they tend to last more and they tend to, because they're growing from a small place into a big place, they tend to have some roots to it. And
Absolutely.
yeah, no, I wish I had brought up that point that you brought up about just the simple asking their story of how they met. That really gets them definitely right back into their strengths. And, one thing I ask them a lot, or I remind them a lot, especially if they're having a hard session. Not every session ties up nicely, right? Some sessions
Right.
are raw. And I'll remind them at the end, I'll say, I know this is really hard, but I need you to pause for just a minute and just
Yeah. Yeah. I
look.
like that.
He's sitting here next to you. She's
Yeah.
sitting here next to you. So many people aren't.
Uh-huh.
And he is, and she is. And that, from my perspective, having done this for a long time, that counts for way more than you could possibly even imagine. And when they hear that, they start to go, oh, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
And it gives them, even in a hard moment, something to hang on to. What I really wished, Tammy, is I wish that as much as I liked this presentation format, I would love to do a whole nother hour where then after I lay out the ideas, then everyone, because some
It's,
people won't comment because they don't want to interrupt the flow and they want
uh,
us to get as much content as possible. But where we had a full hour for Q&A and just sharing, not even Q&A, but just sharing like this, right?
yeah.
To hear so many other people's how they adapted or what they got from it that they hadn't thought of or what they could share like, oh wow, I hadn't thought of that. I love that. I want to steal that from you,